Hey everybody, it's Ish and Ed, and today we're talking Destiny 2 gameplay. Ish, you were at the event last week and you got to play Destiny 2. What about the gameplay got you most excited? What should fans really be hyped about?
I think what fans should really be hyped about is the changes to the classes themselves. They have this air of being familiar, so returning players will definitely feel comfortable, but they've all got these tweaks that make them feel like new characters altogether.
What do you mean by that?
Okay, for instance, the Titan. The Titan's gotten a lot of love. I know me and you play Destiny a lot together, and you know how I'm always complaining about how the Titan should be this tank, yet my Gunslinger Warlock was the god of death and resurrection and surviving tough fights. But the Titan now has like a class ability where he could put up mobile cover or throw up these walls of light that just stop everything. He can take more damage. His supers have been changed to change the way the Titan performs as a whole. Like the Striker itself can become a walking juggernaut of lightning, which is something we didn't see before.
Yeah, so you got to see the Striker up close. I mean, I know the Striker had some issues, especially in PvE, because its super, while powerful, was kind of like very niche. It really didn't, you didn't want to get up close and personal to a horde of enemies. Even if you took out like 7 or 8 enemies, there's still probably another large enemy around to kill you. So you think that won't be a problem with Destiny 2? How is it going to be a little different this time, you think, with the Striker?
I think with the Striker specifically, the fact that you become electrified for like 8 seconds or so, it's probably a little less, but it felt like forever while I was doing it. You don't just get one fist of havoc. You can slam more than one time. So you can slam in an area, run to another area and slam, or you can use this powerful shoulder charge that one hit kills things in front of you. So if you're in a room where there's a boss who has like a wall of ads in front of him, you can take out the ads, still make your way to the more powerful enemy, and then like start to do your damage there until it runs out.
Were you a little
and then hopefully like throw up a wall.
Were you a little tougher when you used Electrified? Like, are you a little harder to kill, or are you still just as vulnerable?
You were a little harder to kill, but it didn't feel as overpowered as it did in Destiny 1. I don't know if you recall, like the Striker or even the Blade Dancer would be like impossible to kill at times once they started glowing. I was still able to take out an enemy Striker when I was playing Crucible, but they did have that extra kick that really made them feel tanky. So you can feel a little braver just charging into the fray. You're not Superman though.
Do you think it's going to be OP in PvP?
I thought so, not gonna lie. I thought so going in, because when I first tried the Striker in a strike, but when I got to play the PvP, the way the 3 classes work is so well balanced that I honestly didn't even mind that they were so tanky at all.
Now you're saying that all classes now have that like class ability. So does that mean even the Striker is going to have that wall of light, like the Defender had?
Yes. Yep, the Striker's going to have that wall of light that it's on a cooldown, and it's on a decent cooldown. I've noticed each class ability has a different cooldown. Like the Hunter has the dodge roll across all classes, and that's on like a 4-second cooldown. The wall of light was probably on like an 8 to 10-second cooldown, but it lasts for a decent amount of time as well. And you could just throw it up, and it's not part of your super, so you can remain tanky even when you're not supercharged, which I appreciated.
So essentially, a Striker could go electrified or use the super, blow up a bunch of stuff, and throw up a wall of light to protect itself.
Yep, that's exactly how I was using it. I would run into a room, kill the Guardians in there, and before somebody else ran in to take me out, I threw up a wall so I could retreat and force them in another direction, maybe leading them towards my fellow Warlocks or Hunters that were waiting around the corner for them.
That sounds incredibly helpful.
Yes, super helpful.
Did you get to see the Sentinel in action at all?
Only in video. They didn't. The only new class they allowed us to play with was the Dawnblade, which was the Warlock's new class, which is essentially Sunsinger minus res, but the addition of a super powerful badass sword and a DPS ad controlling machine.
So is Resurrection basically gone, you think?
From what I can see, yeah, it seems gone. Unless they put it on another element, which would be interesting. I would like to see maybe a Void Res or something. But the Warlock now, more than just self-preservation, it seems to be geared more towards self and support. Like you can drop this pool of light, which isn't part of your super, and it's just your class ability that lasts for a few seconds, and it could heal any Guardian that steps in it. Or you can alter it to buff their attack and defense. So you become more of a field player rather than I'm going to take these hits, die, and resurrect myself. Instead, I'm going to heal, stand in my light, take a little more punishment because that ups your defense a bit because you're healing while you're in it, and still keep the onslaught going. So my super is more focused on dealing damage rather than just bringing you back to life.
So it sounds like they're really trying to gear the Warlock to be kind of that support class, support slash DPS kind of class, almost like a healer slash damage dealer kind of class. Does that sound about accurate?
Yeah, that definitely sounds accurate from my time with it. Like I definitely felt myself, like I said, me and you play Destiny a lot, and you know how reckless I tend to play?
Yes.
I love being on the front lines even though I don't belong there. And this time I was playing more midfield, backfield, dropping pulls behind cover, so like, because Hunters are still incredibly squishy. They don't have as high recovery or as the Titan and Warlock do. So I was able to drop a pool of light behind cover for them to roll into and just keep my team alive, basically. And it felt natural.
How big was the pool? I know, like, for example, the fight against, what's his name, the giant ogre from King's Fall, I already forgot. The we have that reclaimed light. Is it like that small kind of a pool, or is it the really big? Or is it bigger that people can? The whole
it's funny that you mentioned Golgoroth. It's probably the exact same size of that one pool where everybody kind of had to cram in. It's not overly big, so it wouldn't be easily abused, especially in PvP, where you could drop it and it's behind like 3 different pieces of cover. It's big enough to where 3 people can stand in it.
Okay.
Basically.
So it sounds like they were probably inspired by that mechanic that they thought of, and hey, that'd be pretty cool for like a class.
Yeah, definitely.
So in general, do you think that the classes are really starting to go towards more defined roles? I remember in Destiny 1, it was really just like you kind of had tanks and healers and DPS classes, but not really. Everyone kind of did a little bit of everything. It wasn't really as defined. Do you think that you envision raids and higher level content really being having more specific roles this time in Destiny 2?
Yes, definitely. Especially if they use their new mechanics properly, because we know sometimes they didn't exactly steer mechanics towards specific Guardians because they all felt so general. I definitely see more in the future players, like whether they're using the new clan system or LFG, asking for classes more because of they need that role filled rather than they just want to res. Like, we needed 2 healers for this raid. We need DPS. We need a tank for the boss. It's going to be more of that than just, we need a bubble, or all warlocks must be Sunsingers, or something silly like that.
Now let's talk a little about the Hunter. So the Hunter always kind of had a very hot and cold relationship with the raids in Destiny, I felt like. So the first raid in Destiny 1, Vault of Glass, it really wasn't all that useful. You usually kind of just stuck the Hunter as holding the relic, and that's really all it was kind of. Not that it couldn't function there, but it just wasn't as helpful as, say, a Defender or a Sunsinger, right? But in Crota's End and King's Fall, it was quite useful because you liked having that speedy character to run the sword in Crota and to run the ledges in King's Fall. So what was the Hunter like? What kind of role are you kind of steering the Hunter towards?
For the Hunter, I'm kind of mixed on the Hunter, because the Hunter very much felt like the least changed of the 3 classes. But at the same time, I kind of get why that is. The Hunter was probably the most defined class in Destiny 1, if I really look at it. It's the fastest class. It was the best at getting around and into tight spaces. Like you said, it was the best for carrying relics. Even unskilled players can take a Hunter and do those things, while Warlocks and Titans needed skill in order to pull them off, and a constant switching of stats. The Hunter still fills that perfect niche of speed and solo play, and just being a great range DPS fighter. And the dodge roll helps facilitate, like, in case you have to get up close. So it still feels relatively the same, and I think it's just, its role doesn't really shift much. It's just a more specific DPS.
Did you get to see the new Hunter class in action, or they keep that in the wraps like the Sentinel?
They showed us, just like with the Sentinel, they showed us some gameplay of it, but didn't let us actually play with it. I got to play with the new Gunslinger, though. How's
the Gunslinger different?
The Gunslinger is basically the same. There's 2 main differences, though. One is you have your dodge roll, which was introduced with the Night Stalker class, I believe, in the Taken King, which felt really good to have with the Gunslinger, because I think it fits that class very well, where you're just running, gunning, and just getting the hell out of damage. And the Golden Gun itself has 6 shots instead of 3. Like, I was melting through majors with it. You have a few seconds to fan them out, but you can fan out 6 shots really rapidly, and they're very accurate, and it just felt really good to pull off.
Do you think it'll be powerful in raids as well, like against bosses? Like, what kind of role do you think a Gunslinger is going to have in Destiny 2?
In Destiny 2 for raids and strikes, which I played and which we're looking at now, it's definitely a DPS machine. That's going to be its role. I see it more back of the fields. Its speed can help with revives in a clutch probably, though it shouldn't jump out into large crowds. But it's definitely its damage dealing capabilities with the Gunslinger and from what I've seen of the Arcstrider are just incredible.
So right now we're looking at like a lot. Looks like some new enemies, some new. It looks like almost like these dog type enemies. We see like the Cabal throwing up these giant, massive walls of shields or defense or something like that. Can you tell us a little bit about what the new enemies are like that you were fighting against in the Inverted Spire?
Yeah, a lot of the enemies in Inverted Spire, a lot of them were returning, but they tweaked enemies to be both more fun to fight and more fair to come up against, while also making them more challenging, if that makes sense. The new enemies, which that I got to face, are 2 Cabal types. One were the beasts, those dog-like enemies you see. They're really fast and they do a lot of damage, but they're very easy to kill. But you can't really let your guard down because if a crowd comes, you're dead. As you probably will see me die to them mostly several times because they swarm you really fast. They're like way worse than Thrall in my book.
Yeah, I was going to ask. They sound like a Cabal version of Thrall, it sounds like.
Pretty much, yeah. They're just even more aggressive if you can believe that. It's insane. And for the Cabal, a few new enemy types we got to see. The shields are different. Like for the Phalanx, they don't have those shields where you're forced to try to hit the top of their head or the bottom of their feet. They drop these light shields that cover a wide range, but those with good aim could hit the center, explode the shield, and leave them vulnerable. So it adds a little bit of strategy to encountering them and like switching weapons. And then they have flamethrowers who have weak points that you could explode to take out enemies nearby them, which I thought was really cool. Like it's incorporating more physics and more of what they're wearing into the fight rather than here's a Cabal, here's a stronger Cabal that takes more bullets, and here's an even like it's not that anymore, which I definitely appreciated.
Earlier we saw some Vex too. Anything notable about the Vex?
They still teleport like madmen, which I liked and both pissed me off because they teleport always when you're about to fire a rocket. The Minotaur shields also have a weak point now too, which is definitely appreciated because those were huge bullet sponges, especially during raids like the Vault of Glass. I know, especially when you're running heroic or trying to complete a challenge, the shielded Minotaurs were the absolute worst. And they feel more manageable, still very powerful, and they still have their same techniques for the most part. I didn't see too much new Vex outside of the final boss of the strike though.
Okay. Now for weapons, what can you tell us about the weapons in the game? Do they feel a lot different, or they more or less feel the same? Like, give us a little sense of what the weapons were like in Destiny 2 when you got to play.
As a person who loves Destiny but isn't necessarily a fan of first-person shooters or like gun games in general, I absolutely love the guns in Destiny 2. They feel snappier. The aim still has that bit of a pull if you turn the assisted aim on. I definitely turned it down. It was more enjoyable with it turned slightly down. But they feel snappier, more responsive. The feel on the controller for each is different. With the rumble, it's not just the consistent rumble for all guns. The new weapon types, specifically the submachine gun, was definitely amazing. It tears through everything. I definitely see it getting nerfed sometime in the future. Because next to the auto rifle, it was no comparison. Submachine gun for the win all day. And the grenade launcher was very fun to use. It rewards players for accuracy. It does its most damage when you hit directly, but it still is good against groups of weaker enemies with the splash damage. Much better than a rocket launcher, but requires a more skilled hand to aim because, you know, it has like that lob shot rather than a direct missile.
Now, they're going to be changing the weapon types, how weapons are organized. So in the previous game, it was obviously primary, special, and heavy weapons. How is that going to work now in Destiny 2? Can you give us a little sense of that?
The way they switched it is more to, I guess we can call it ammo types. So you have kinetic, energy, and power. Now, some weapons can actually fit, like, have versions in all 3 slots, some in only 2, and then, like, rocket launchers and grenades are only in power. But, like, for instance, at one point, I was running a dual pulse rifle build. I had a primary pulse rifle, then I had another rifle in my energy slot, and then a grenade launcher or a sniper rifle in my power slot. And this allows a bit more freedom to your loadouts. Instead of being restricted to, like, this is your second slot, you have to use either a fusion, sniper, or shotgun. Doesn't matter what you want. Like, you can now have options for a rifle or a hand cannon or a sidearm in the secondary slot. And I think that's definitely going to open up strategy a lot more and really change how metas work.
The energy weapons. Now, are energy weapons just essentially like charged up, like in terms of just the element, or is there something different about energy weapons that I'm not realizing?
I think it's, from what I could play, I think it's pretty much the first thing you said. Not charged up, but just having that element of fire in them. Because shotguns felt the same, rifles felt the same in that slot. There was no like hold the button down. It's just a different type of damage, which will work better against certain types of enemies. Like I noticed energy did really well against shields, while kinetic did really well against unshielded enemies.
Okay, so there's still advantages to using now kinetic weapons. I know kinetic weapons essentially were just kind of like what you used when you didn't have special ammo or something, or you know, just didn't have an element. Do kinetic weapons, do you think, have a better role in this game, or?
Yeah, definitely, because there were moments where I was fighting and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to kill this thing with my energy weapon. And then I switched to kinetic and realized I was doing way more damage. So there's definitely going to be more of a use the right weapon this time rather than just your weapon that happens to have the highest DPS or an element. Because that kinetic will make a difference, that energy will make a difference. And to facilitate that, for me while I was playing, I felt it, and a few other people that were there at the event that I spoke to also felt it. The weapon switching felt faster to really help facilitate that strategic approach of switching weapons to what you need rather than just staying on your weapon that you feel is your favorite.
So as this looks like we're getting to the end of this strike here, at the end of this video, so give us a little sense of what you thought of the strike. Was it fun? I mean, it looks like it was pretty intense with the drilling, and now this boss is falling through the floor and stuff. What was going on here?
Yeah, it definitely feels more like a mini raid than previous strikes did. There's constant evolution of the objectives. You're constantly getting a new objective. It's pushing you forward and having you do new things. And then when you get to this boss fight, after all that extreme and harrowing situation of being bombarded with enemy fire and constant Cabal dropships, this boss has 3 stages, and he's just changing the board literally beneath your feet. He's just pulling it out from under you like a rug. And it keeps you, it's forcing you to switch strategies as enemies are thrown in, while keeping you on your toes and keeping focused on him, because he's surprisingly quick for a big guy. And it was just a really good feeling, very intense, action focused, none of that stop and let your ghost charge something for a million minutes. It just felt constantly progressing, I guess. And
one last question. So I know one of our complaints from the first game was a lot of the bosses felt kind of just like bullet sponges and they weren't that dynamic. Did you get a sense that this will be a little different with Destiny 2 through the inverted Spire, or?
Well, the final boss specifically, he did take a lot of damage to kill, but it didn't feel so much as a bullet sponge, but more like the fight transforming. Like when we did focus fire him, I got to run the strike more than once. When we did focus fire on him, we were able to burn him relatively quickly. So it does feel more like you can beat them fast if you use the proper strategy. If you're playing right, you're not going to be punished for it by a boss that doesn't die. So it definitely does, to answer your question, feel better than it did in Destiny 1.
Gotcha. Alright, well that's going to do it for this video. I want to thank you for watching. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you like the video. We're going to let this, we have about a minute or 2 left for this boss fight. We'll let you just go ahead and enjoy the end of this strike, the inverted Spire. And thanks again for watching. Thanks, Ish.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Getting up from that. Zavala, we're good.
Well done. Failsafe, what's your assessment of this incident?
Vex records indicate the Cabal discovered the mine and dug into this world to capture it. Had the Red Legion achieved their goal, I estimate a 60% chance this planetoid would have been destroyed in the ensuing battles. Luckily, the captain stepped in.
Huzzah!